We live in a new era of baseball where players' emotions and quotes are embraced rather than shunned. We still have trouble with debating pointless unwritten rules from time to time, but the movement to let the kids play has been a general success for baseball. Bat flips, pop-offs, fun walk-off celebrations, these are some of the best parts of our game that let the players show off some personality. But even just 10 years ago, it wasn't always this simple. MLB was home to many excitable and abrasive personalities in their game, and while marketing has never been their strength, their treatment towards some of these players was mind-boggling to say the least. One of the most energetic, divisive figures of the early 2010s was a Dominican outfielder who didn't find his stroke until his late 20s before absolutely exploding into baseball stardom. His name is Carlos Gomez, and his career is anything but simple. Gomez came from humble beginnings in the Dominican Republic. He grew up in a family of 5 in the Dominican city of Santiago, where luxuries came few and far between. His father, Carlos Sr., worked as a delivery driver for a bank, and Carlos remarks that there were days where a plate of rice and eggs had to suffice for all 3 meals of the day. But, as we know, Gomez was athletically gifted, and he had the determination that made for a perfect combo for any major leaguer. Gomez worked hard and failed at many tryout camps before finally landing himself a small deal with the New York Mets worth $60,000. The Mets instantly fell in love with Gomez's flashy glove and blazing speed and saw stardom in his future. Gomez sprinted fast through the minor leagues, entering rookie ball at age 18 and getting promoted to the majors at age 21. As a young player in the DR, Gomez's favorite players to watch included Andrew Jones, Manny Ramirez, and Ricky Henderson, to name a few. Funnily enough, during his tenure with the Mets, Gomez had a chance to spend time on the field with Ricky Henderson, who was then the first base coach for New York. Henderson spent extra time with Gomez and Jose Reyes, who both benefited greatly as Henderson helped enhance their knowledge of the fine art of base stealing. This would become a signature of Carlos Gomez's career. Though the Mets' hopes were high, Gomez simply wasn't ready to reach his potential just yet. He did swipe an impressive 12 bases in 58 games, but struggled offensively with just a .232 batting average and 55 OPS plus in 139 plate appearances. In a shocking development, this would be all the Mets needed to see before deciding to part ways with the young spark plug. It was definitely a worthy trade for the Mets, who used the hype around Gomez to put him in a package to send to the Twins that also included Philip Humber in exchange for Johan Santana. Santana would become their ace for years and throw the franchise's first no-hitter. As for Gomez in Minnesota, it was a similar story, as even with a pair of years with full season playing time, Gomez failed to establish himself as a true offensive threat. Gomez had some pretty highlights in his time with the Twins, but with coaches still applying a small ball mindset to his play, the results simply were not there. Finally, Minnesota had seen enough and decided to flip him to Milwaukee in a deal that brought them shortstop J.J. Hardy. The Brewers took this flyer on Gomez more to free up a spot for their then touted prospect Alcides Escobar, and continued to emphasize that Gomez play into the speed of his skill set, which meant bunting for base hits, sacrifices, and trying to improve plate discipline as a means to get on base at all costs. Because of this, Gomez's struggles at the plate continued for a couple more years. Aside from a fun 2011 playoff bomb for Gomez, there isn't much to talk positively about in these first 2 years as a Brewer. It was in 2012 that the baby gloves were finally taken off of the then 26-year-old Gomez, as Brewers coaches implored him to try a new approach, one that he himself deemed fit for play. Finally, baseball was gonna let Carlos be Carlos, and he was about to put on a show because of it. But in 2012, he won the center field job outright and registered his most plate appearances in a season in 4 years. 2012 wasn't a full-on breakout, but served great importance to Gomez's development. After hitting 25 home runs in the 5 years prior, Gomez clubbed 19 home runs in 2012 alone, discovering his power stroke in a serious way. His walk rate declined while his slugging percentage went up, and it seemed that Gomez's more aggressive approach both at the plate and on the base paths was benefiting him and his team greatly. The Brewers saw this potential coming to fruition and decided to act quickly, inking Gomez to a team-friendly 3-year, $24 million extension. Gomez happily accepted, as it meant that he could ensure that his parents did not have to work ever again after grinding to put food on the table for him as a child. De facto team captain Ryan Braun saw this potential as well. In April of 2013, he marveled over Gomez, saying, "I can't imagine anybody having a package of tools that's more impressive than his. I've said it before, but he's the only guy in the league who has all 5 tools and can rap in multiple languages." But that was before Carlos Gomez began his 2-year tear, as he ascended to one of the best players in the league. After a tough 10-game stretch to kick off the season, Gomez was absolutely engulfed in flames. In 22 games after April 13th of that year, Gomez hit .494 with 6 home runs, 7 stolen bases, and a 1.443 OPS, earning him a nod for NL Player of the Week. But he was far from done. A first half with 14 home runs, 21 stolen bases, and an .870 OPS earned Carlos Gomez the first All-Star nod of his career, a long-awaited moment for the young kid who might have come up a bit too early 6 years prior. 2013 was a magical year for Gomez as he became one of just 6 players in MLB history to steal 40 or more bases, hit 20 or more home runs, and 10 or more triples. He joined a class including Lou Brock, Carlos Beltran, and Jimmy Rollins, among others. Also, that defensive prowess was still very much there for Gomez in center field, being that he had the best defensive season of his entire career. His 29 defensive runs saved in 2013 was 4th in MLB and 2nd among all outfielders. And when you couple that with a 128 OPS plus, 40 stolen bases, and 24 home runs, you have yourself a superstar. This helped Gomez secure the first and only Gold Glove of his career in 2013. He became just the 5th Gold Glover in Brewers history to that point and became the first Brewer in 31 years to receive the award. Since Gomez's win, Lorenzo Cain in 2019 is the only Brewer to win one since. Gomez continued his all-star level play into 2014 as well, mashing over 20 home runs, stealing over 30 bases, and posting an OPS plus over 125 for the 2nd consecutive year. He'd nab another all-star nod and receive MVP votes again in back-to-back years. As good as he was, his personality also took the center stage with his talents though. Gomez is famous, or infamous depending on what kind of fan you are, for several on-field altercations during his rise to stardom from 2012 to 2014. A spat with Brian McCann after homering off Paul Maholm, who apparently threw at him earlier in the game, and Garrett Cole's gripe with Gomez's bat flip on a ball he thought went out are just a couple examples of how Gomez's emotion would rub some the wrong way. But there was no denying, Gomez was entertaining as hell to watch. By the end of 2014, Gomez had plenty of impressive accolades to hang his hat high on. First, let's talk about his speed. From 2012 to 2014, Carlos Gomez swiped 111 bases, tied for 3rd in MLB during this window, trailing only Jose Altuve with 124 and Rajai Davis with 127. Only 6 players in MLB stole over 100 bases from 2012 to 2014, and only 3 of them managed to hit over 20 home runs, with only one of them passing the 30 home run benchmark. That'd be Carlos Gomez, who soared past it with 66 home runs in this 3-year span. There was no better power speed threat in baseball during this time than Gomez, and we know this by now. In 2014, Carlos Gomez was the only player in baseball that year to record 30 or more doubles, 20 or more home runs, and steal 30 or more bases. It's hard to express how well-rounded of a player Gomez was during his peak without using WAR. From 2013 to 2014, Carlos Gomez accumulated 12.7 Fangraphs WAR in 2 seasons, which was the 7th highest total in MLB, ahead of players at that time like Robinson Cano, Adrian Beltre, and Paul Goldschmidt, placing him among the elite of the league. Despite the Brewers falling short in the couple years that was considered Gomez's peak, I think fans probably still had a great time getting to watch him every day. But as the Brewers began to enter a rebuild of their own, it became clear that Gomez's time was dwindling in Milwaukee as he became a lucrative trade piece come the 2015 deadline. He was still effective in 2015, but nowhere near the production of the previous 2 years. He was stealing less bases, striking out more, but was still an above-league average hitter come the deadline. Milwaukee had some choices for potential trade partners, including a deal with the Mets that would have gotten them Wilmer Flores and an injured Zach Wheeler, but failed physicals and broken down communication derailed the deal, which was probably the best case for both sides. Milwaukee ended up trading Carlos Gomez and Mike Fiers to the Houston Astros instead, receiving a haul of impressive prospects, all of whom panned out into decent to great major leaguers. This trade tree is pretty nuts, so let's detour to break it down really quickly. Milwaukee got Brett Phillips as the headliner, but he wouldn't find his stroke until years later down in Tampa Bay. He'd get flipped to Kansas City first in a trade that brought the Brewers Mike Moustakas in 2018, who they needed for their NLCS run that year. Domingo Santana was also an outfielder in this deal, and he had a pair of great years from 2016 to 2017, but the biggest pieces received by far were Josh Hader and Adrian Hauser. Hader has become the best relief pitcher on the planet, and Hauser has long been a stud in the Brewers' rotation and bullpen. Overall, the trade was a massive win for the Brewers, as Gomez and Fiers didn't perform super well for the Astros as they fizzled out in the ALDS that year. Gomez did, however, hit a pair of clutch home runs during their brief run, which is pretty cool. As for Gomez, his career began its decline after that 2015 year. He bounced from Houston to Texas to Tampa Bay and finally back to the Mets where his career began over the last 4 years of his career. Many teams tried to recapture the fire of those Milwaukee years, and Gomez still had that same fire emotionally, but the production never really resurfaced. In January of 2020, Gomez announced his retirement from professional baseball, and in September of 2021, he was inducted into the Brewers Wall of Honor, signing papers Brewers to officially retire as a Milwaukee Brewer. Gomez by no means had a Hall of Fame career, but I remember him distinctly as one of the key players that ignited my love for baseball. Say what you will about his abrasive personality, but you also can't deny that his peak was one of the best of any elite player from the 2010s. The class of players with significant power and speed combinations is a small one, and Carlos Gomez inserted himself into that group with impressive force. In the end, baseball's an entertainment business at its core, and Gomez embodies entertainment to a T. Thanks for watching today's video, and now a word from today's sponsor, Manscaped.